Have you ever walked into a fabric store and saw fat quarters on the shelf or heard someone talk about a fat quarter and you smile and act like you know what they're talking about? Well, today I'm going to explain to you exactly what is a fat quarter, how's it cut, and what are we going to do with them. So stick around. Okay guys, here on my cutting table I have a yard of fabric that I've cut, and it is doubled over just so it fits nicely on this cutting table that I'm using today. So a yard of fabric is 36 inches long this way. So when you take the bolt up, they're going to unroll it and cut it at 36. Then you would have a yard of fabric. If you went in and you asked for a quarter of a yard of fabric, and I've already cut this just to make it easier, they're going to cut it on the 9-inch line. So I've cut a quarter yard of fabric out of this yard of fabric just to show you the difference between a quarter cut yard and a fat quarter. So a quarter cut yard is going to be 9 inches by the width of fabric. And when people talk about the width of fabric, they are talking about from your side seam to your side seam. And then we have the selvage on the edges that we're going to cut away. So this is what a quarter of a yard looks like. It's long, 9 inches long, or 9 inches wide by the width of fabric long. Now if we take a look at a fat quarter of a cut, it's going to look like this. It's more of a fat rectangle. And I'm going to explain to you what the difference is. So if we buy a fat quarter, it's going to have more usable space for a little bit of a larger product or project. So the difference that we have here is we have this long skinny piece, or we have this fat rectangle. Now what's the difference in how a fat quarter is cut? A fat quarter is cut by taking a yard of fabric and they're going to cut it straight down the center in the middle of the fabric. And then they're going to take the rest of that fabric and they're going to cut it in half again. So if I had 4 of these laid together to make up my whole yard, there would be a block here, a block here, a block here, and a block here. It's just a different way of cutting the fabric to give you a more useful piece when you're working on a project. So we have the fat quarter, we have the quarter cut of yard. So if you're watching something maybe on YouTube, because I do that all the time, and someone says, I'm going to use a fat quarter, don't go to the fabric store and ask them to cut you a quarter piece of fabric, because it's not going to work in the project that you're working on, because you need more space to do something with that. So let's talk about the cost of fat quarters, what they look like when you go to the store. So we have, typically, if you're just getting one fat quarter, it's going to look like this. So a lot of times you'll see them like this. You know, you can get them, they look so different depending on where you're shopping at, and I've got a whole stack right here. So the fat quarter ends up to be 18 inches by 21 inches. Sometimes they'll be a little larger than that just because of whoever cut the fabric, but they shouldn't be smaller. The thing is, when you go shopping for fat quarters, they're so cute, so you come home with a whole stack of them. You can even get these at some of the Dollar Trees. They sell them for $1.25. Might not be the best quality of fabric, but starting out, you guys, it's not going to matter. When you get into making things like a quilt and you want higher quality fabric, you might go to the store, the quilt store maybe, and you might buy a fat quarter bundle. So a fat quarter bundle is just from a specific line, everything is already coordinating, everything is already going to work together. So for me, I make quilts. I love to make quilts. But when I go to the store, it's overwhelming to see all the bolts of fabric and then me figuring out what's going to go with them. So a lot of times getting a fat quarter bundle gives you the option of all the different designs in a particular line that you would like to put into your quilt. So you'll find them like this. You know, you might go find a small little bundle of fat quarters. I got these at Michael's the other day because I'm working on a quilt and I wanted to make it scrappy, and I ran out of fabric that was different because I was using my leftovers. So I just needed one or two more pieces that a fat quarter would do me, and I didn't want to cut into any yardage to get that. So I picked this up. This has 5 fat quarters. It was $12.99. This, like I said, $1.50 to maybe $4. This type of fat quarter bundle, it just depends on the quality of the fabric. This is a Riley Blake. This was probably somewhere in the $50 or $60 range, but I've got something that I can complete a really large project and it's going to coordinate. Now, let's say it's not a quilt. Maybe you're making zipper pouches or book sleeves or a bag. You could get one of these and you like the fabrics, and then you'll just have a whole lot to work with. So that's all about fat quarters, how they're cut. I believe that we all need to start at the beginning. So the last video that I made was about threading your machine, and I did it on one of my old vintage machines because it's much simpler. Because on the newer machines, a lot of the things are closed. You can't actually see what the mechanism looks like. And I'm gonna do, when we do a project with fat quarter, I'm gonna thread a machine that has everything hidden, so you can't really see the take up lever and things like that. It all works the same. Winding a bobbin, you just have to figure out how your machine winds a bobbin, and we'll talk about that too. So that's it. I just wanted to do a quick video about fat quarters, why you need them, why they work. If you like the content that you're seeing here, if you want to come hang out with me and sew with a friend or learn about fabric sewing, we're going to talk a little bit about real estate along the way, because during my day job, I'm a realtor and a mortgage lender. I love to craft. I love to sew. This is my downtime, and I wanted to share it with you guys, starting with the basics, the very simple stuff. Until next time, keep crafting, keep learning, and remember, don't be afraid to give things a second chance. That includes yourself, because sometimes we need a second chance too. So if you failed before, or you feel like you failed before, you just didn't get far enough in your sewing journey, and come along with me so we can do it. Again, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Content. This is technically my 3rd YouTube video, so I'm practicing. And I just happened to notice that I don't even have my light on, so I'm gonna have to do this all over again. That's fun.